Candy.
Candy.
Why?
¿Por qué?
Dulces possible?
Problem number 14.
It always has to be candy whenever I
We are told that f
That's a little
of
harder to see.
x.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to see.
I need to go and get some new markers.
Just use black.
All my black markers are dried up. F of x.
Because you buy the off-brand.
No, I get them from the school. I have Sharpies.
Yeah, the off-brand.
Well, yeah, these are off-brand, but I have a Sharpie and that dried up a long time ago. I just have to go downstairs. So I've got f of x is equal to the absolute value of x squared minus 2.
Wait, why don't we do it on the smartboard anymore?
X is equal to 1. So what we want to do is we're asked to find the slope of the curve at this indicated point. All right. This is where we kind of have to what throws us off is this absolute value bracket. It shouldn't. We're going to do this the exact same way that we've done all the other problems. F of a plus h minus f of a all over h. Now, if f of x is equal to the absolute value of x, then f of a should be equal to the absolute value of a minus 2. Basically what I did there is wherever there was an x, I replaced it with an a. Now, to do f of a plus h, I do the exact same thing. Wherever there was an x, I replace it with an a plus h. Okay? So now when I take the limit of all this stuff as h approaches 0, what I'm really taking the limit of is the absolute value of a plus h minus 2 minus the absolute value of a minus 2 all over h. Now, the question is,
How do we cancel out some stuff?
here's some things that we got to think about. I got to come back and I got to think about some things here. What is the absolute value of x minus 2 at x equals 1? Right?
Right?
In other words, let's graph this, we've got to just kind of think this through. We just got to, and when I'm asking this question, I'm not expecting you guys to answer. I just want you to think in your head. Okay? So let's clear all this stuff out. This is very typical of what you will do on your AP Calc. I have the exam. I have the absolute value of x minus 2. Now the problem with the absolute value of x minus 2 is there's some issues with regards to, well, one is we can't take a derivative at a cusp. But isn't this is really two linear functions. If we were to break this up into a piecewise function, this would really be two linear functions, wouldn't it? Yeah? So what we would like to do, if it is possible, is maybe break this up into a piecewise function and then do the calculus. It'd be a lot easier. Because see, the problem here is that how do I cancel out the a's? Do I do plus or minus? And does the plus or minus cancel out everything? Like, it gets complicated, right? But it would be so much easier if I just focused on this line, and it would be the same, right? So what is this line?
Isn't it negative x minus 2?
Yeah, so let's look at the graph. When my y-intercept is positive 2. So now let's figure out what the slope is. So if I go over 1, what happens to my y value? It goes down 1. So my slope goes down 1 over 1, which is negative 1. So really, if I were to do a piecewise function, if I were to plug in negative 1x plus, what was that y-intercept again? 2. Hey, that's the exact same thing, isn't it? Now the limit, or the slope, based on the limit that we're going to take, would be the same, right? By the way, we've already figured out what the slope is. The slope is negative 1. But how could I change that? What would I do differently? Well, what I could do is I could think of f of x as, there's two possibilities, right? It could just be the regular x minus 2, or f of x could be the negative of x minus 2. Right? Let me show you what I'm talking about. Right? Because both of those values would work, right? Because if I took the absolute value of this, right, because you could get a positive or negative and get the same. In other words, think of it like this. What could I plug into those absolute value brackets that would give me 3?
Negative 3.
I could plug in a 3, or I could plug in the negative of 3. And both of them would give me 3. So we're applying that same concept here. I could use x minus 2, or I could use the opposite of x minus 2. Which one should we choose?
Does it matter?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't think it should matter. Because you're going to get the same answer either way.
Maybe we should use the opposite.
Well, how would you choose? Which one would you guys choose?
It shouldn't matter.
I think it, because you have to get where x equals 1, right? So you have to use the opposite, wouldn't you?
Well, let's think about this. We actually graphed the opposite one.
And it already passes through.
And it already passes through. So we know what the slope is negative 1, but now we're trying to figure out algebraically how do we choose. I want to challenge you guys. We know that if we were to do this one, it would work, right? Because that's the one we graphed. But how could you want to try it using this as the function instead?
It wouldn't work.
No, just do.
Let's just see. Let's just see, okay?
Can you just plug in?
So now well, wait. If I push this through, oh wait, I wrote this down wrong. Is it x minus 2 or 2 minus x? It's x minus 2. So if I push this through, I would get negative x plus 2, right?
Yep.
So let's use that, but let's use that one. Because this one, what do you think that represents? You guys are guessing correctly, but I don't think you understand why. Let's graph the other function and see what it is. If I were to plug in x plus 2,
Well, it doesn't pass through the point that we need.
it's x minus 2, right? That's the other function. Guess which one this one does?
It doesn't pass through.
It passes through the other part of the line. What are we interested in?
The 0.11.
We want to know when x equals 1. So when does that occur? Which function addresses that better?
The opposite.
The opposite one. So let's do this. Let's take the limit of h as h approaches 0. But now what would this one be if we chose this function right here? How would I write the a plus h? Wouldn't I do something like this, like minus a plus h in parentheses plus 2 minus minus a plus h. Or not a plus h, it would just be minus a plus 2, right?
Yeah,
Did I do that right?
I don't know.
Let's think it through. Does that seem right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now, if I say the limit as h approaches 0 of all this stuff, I'm going to push this negative sign through, so I get negative a minus h plus 2, minus is a plus a, and that becomes negative 2, all over h. Cool. So now here's some interesting things.
So it's gonna be h over, it's gonna be 1,
Wait,
negative 1.
we have, what do we have?
Because it's negative h over.
We have negative h
Over,
over h,
which can pretty much be
which will cancel
2.
to 1 over 1. So really what we need is the limit of negative 1 over 1 as h approaches 0, which is really just
Negative 1.
negative 1. So just to kind of recap that, I really asked a bunch of questions trying to lead you in the direction to understand what you would do and how you would do it. Let's just recap that real quick. And that's the final answer, that's correct. Let's recap that real quick, okay? Here's what we did. We were given this stuff. Now, Mr. Adams knew that I was supposed to separate that, but I wanted to pretend that I was a high school teenager trying to do my homework. So what I did is I said, all right, I know how to find the slope. I'm just going to plug it into this formula, and then what I need to do is I just need to write down f of a and f of a plus h. The problem I ran into was when I plug in that formula, it doesn't get any easier. What do I do with these absolute value brackets? Do I put in plus or minus for everything? Would that work? Would it cancel out right? So then I had to think, well, what can I do? I had to go back and I had to look at this function. Well, when I looked at the graph of the function, what I noticed was we were only interested in x equals 1. And so I noticed that when x equals 1, it's really like a linear function. So I wanted to think of it as in terms of a piecewise function. Well, then I started thinking algebraically, all right, so the absolute value of this when x equals 1, there's two things that I could think about when it comes to absolute value brackets. The regular function, which is x minus 2, and then the opposite of that function, which would be minus the quantity x minus 2, which if I distribute the negative sign through the parentheses, I would have x minus 2, or negative x plus 2. So then I say, well, which function do I choose? Well, I'm interested in x equals 1. Don't leave yet, we're almost done. So then I realized, look, if I choose this function, here, guess what? That's the side that I want. So then what I do is I rewrite the limit using this function instead of the absolute value bracket. I crank through the math and I'm left with negative h over h, which reduces to negative 1 over 1, and I found out that my slope is equal to 1. Any questions?